wonderful speech. Yeah. Now I'm going to call a keynote speaker yet. But just before I say that, I just want to touch on this issue of us letting go of our titles as engineers. I mean, at some point I used to work for an organization where our boss was not an engineer. He never studied anything engineering, but he called himself an engineer. Like, we ended up believing that he's an engineer ourselves. We know he studied psychology, what, but... And then they asked him, how do you become an engineer? He says, no, I Googled. Until we traveled with him to another country. And then they asked, my partner was there, I used to work with him. Are you an engineer? Yes, engineer. And him, yes, he's an engineer. Where did you start? No, I'm a self-taught engineer. Yo, I'm sorry to use the word, they butchered him. They said, never ever say that. It's a crime, you go to jail in this country if you say that. Okay, without wasting time, can I call our keynote speaker, engineer Gugulethu Xaba, to come and address us.
Thank you so much, program directors. Good morning. Still the morning. Someone and good morning.
Good morning.
Well, first I must apologize for my voice. I've got a bit of a flu. It normally isn't like this. I've got the most beautiful voice without the flu. Program directors Chris Ndlovu and Xaba, respected engineers in the house, and those that have been addressing us like Dr. our former statistician general. Greetings to all of you. I'm reminded of, as Mr. Nkumalo was talking here, I'm reminded of a gentleman that I met at some point here in Sentin some years ago, and he was saying to us, this is for real, he was saying to us, I'm the most wise person, but I'm very humble about it. I'm the most intelligent person, but I'm very humble about it. I think our engineers are the most clever people, but they're very humble about it. And what Mr. Mfukeng was saying here is very true. Because you have a situation in the country, even I think the president sometimes is misguided. There's a clip that has been circulating, I'm sure you all saw it, where he's talking about, I'm now appointing a person with requisite skills. The electrical engineer with a minister is going to run, and all of a sudden they are playing the minister saying, I'm not an electrical engineer, I don't know anything about it. And you know how South Africans turn things around, and they start making it a laughing stock. But I'm saying this because I believe what Mr. Mfukeng was talking about here is very true and it's very important. We hosted the International Africa Week. I invited Dr. Umay Fatunde for some of you who saw him in the country, because this is Africa Month, and Happy Africa Month and Happy Africa Day yesterday. There is significance to what I'm sharing with you in terms of this being an Africa Month, because I believe that this is our time as Africans to rise to the occasion, to take charge of our destinies, and to take charge of the engineering aspect, even as all the speakers have spoken, charging us forward in terms of what we need to do in order to drive the necessary implementation of programs, projects, and infrastructure right across our country, because we are truly not where we're supposed to be. And again, I'm going to keep referring to you, BBC, Ndaden Mfukeng, because the things you have spoken about is things I've put on my speech, which are so crucial in terms of engaging parliamentarians, engaging certain portfolio committees. I'm saying this because I've personally took it upon myself to engage them on different things that I would sometimes sit and say, what are these people doing? You know, there is a bill that that has been running around in terms of the protection of intellectual property, etc., and which is really going to decimate a lot of our IP in the country if it is passed into law the way it is. And one has been talking about this, trying to say to artists and people in their respective spaces, please formulate your opinions, come together, talk about these things, say it out and tell these parliamentarians and everybody else that's there to say it's not going to work because of 1, 2, 3, logically detailing steps as to what will be the consequences of a bill passed into law the way it is. So I believe, therefore, it is very important what has been said here in terms of our engagement as engineers right across, because that is when we are going to make a serious impact when we go out there and tell politicians, because somehow there is a system that is political system in place which we can't do anything about unless we change it, where we take some of the people who may even have been dropped out at school to become councillors and some to become even mayors. You've seen this, it's happening in our country. And not that I'm against human beings' potential, but the fact is you have to find a way of reaching out to them and telling them that things does not need to be run this way. We need to change, we need expertise, we need skill, we need understanding, because all of these things that we're talking about, including the Gautrain as an example here, how many of you know how much the Gautrain started off being in terms of project management? Here in Gautrain, in Gauteng. How much was it? It was 7 billion, right? But it ended up being how much? 27 billion, right? And that's a reality of what's happening in South Africa, even with mega projects and catalytic projects that are happening right across the country, whether it's in civils or it's electrical, even the Medupis and all the power stations that we're talking about. You look at them right now and say, where did they start with the costing of the project from its genesis up to when it is implemented? You'd realize that it is a huge gap. I mean, from 7 billion to 27 billion, what percentage increase is that? It's over 300% that you see there. Again, I want to posit that it's because people with relevant skills are not there. Of course, there's an element of corruption and kickbacks and monies that go under table, over table, etc., etc. I've been traveling as well to Nigeria for many, many years, and some years ago, I was looking, I think it was you, Ms. Mapalala, who said that. I was wondering and saying, why are there generators pumping, all across Lagos? And it was just a wonder. And I was told in Nigeria that it is because politicians have their hand now on this thing. Yeah. And once politicians and private interests have a hand on the generation of power through this redundant method of what you call generators, then that problem is never going to go away, because people are now beginning to make money out of that. Little did I know that we're going to experience the same thing in South Africa. And let me tell you about what I do and what we're doing. I'm in the economic development space. We're launching companies, we are doing import substitutions, we are generating, we are pushing a lot of, we believe that South Africa has to manufacture and produce at a dizzying pace if we are to overcome issues of unemployment and poverty that we're having in this country. So in our generation of these companies, there are companies which are making shoes. About 5 of the factories that we're opening we've opened 2 already. We're opening more factories in the next 8 to 12 months. Again, it's because we go there to the DTIC and we see that the incentives that are for everybody, they only go to a certain group of people. And I'm telling you this, if this ELP organization doesn't go and read some of those key documents and policy frameworks that government has in place and begin to challenge some of them and say, how do, particularly because all of us here were black or Africans, how do African organizations and black organizations benefit, and give us the stats in terms of the billions that are placed in a department like the DTIC, and let us see how much of the money has gone to black engineers, black business. I tell you, it's a shame. But some of the money will go obviously to black people, but not black people like us. Because according to our demographic, Indians are black, which forms 2.6% of the population, and we are Africans, we're about 80%, and coloureds about 9.5%. But if you just look at the stats in terms of how do the money flow into the black groups, you'll find typically in KwaZulu-Natal and Philisa in your province. 34 companies that were supposed to benefit from the black industrialists, 29 of them were Indians. And 3 of them are black and combination of black as in Africans and Indians. And only 2 are Africans. Right? It's a reality. But nobody's challenging that. Because we're very intelligent people, but we're very humble about it. And I feel that somehow engineers and all of us sitting around this room, I don't know what education does to us to make us just so soft and very sophisticated and speak nice. I'm not going to talk technicalities. I think our learned friends were just discussing things here, which is quite beautiful. I think here, what we need is an engineering league of progress that is going to be aggressive. That is going to be anchored in research and development and have the component within it to say we are driving issues of engagement through knowledge and wisdom and understanding of the ecosystem of South Africa in terms of what's happening and what needs to happen. Because a lot has gone wrong. And a lot is going wrong as we speak. I don't need to give you statistics. Somebody said there is lies and there is damn lies and there is statistics. You know, and it's a colloquial that normally is used to justify the weak argument. And I don't need to justify any of my stats here or to give you stats because stats is glaringly out there for all of us to see. Whether it is in the space of electrical engineering, which is predominantly the space where there are serious problems. Because right now in the electrical engineering space, there's serious problems. And people are talking about the grid collapse, which is very true. And if it happens, what happened in KwaZulu-Natal in terms of the looting, etc., during President Zuma's arrest, etc., will be a picnic compared to what is about to happen. And it's going to affect all of us. I thought Dr. Palihuta was going to be here in person because I love analyzing things in terms of scenario plannings as to what scenario planners analyze, etc. It's quite interesting. You go and read Lula Meiti as an example, and you go and read Clem Santa as an example in terms of how they've been analyzing how South Africa is going to be moving forward. If those scenarios, things are going this way or are not going this way. I think we're reaching that critical point in our country where the launch of this organization is at an opportune moment because it is going to avert a lot of things happening and going down south. Only if we launch it and we do not sit back and relax and become spectators and just hope people are going to listen to us. It's a noble vision, Mapala, that you've launched. But its importance is going to lie in us taking forward the message aggressively so, and where we need to call these people and go there and lobby them, right? And not be afraid to lobby because that is the concept which I think sometimes has lost meaning because people are afraid of saying it's capture. We don't want to be appearing like we are capturing government. We must capture the government because we only vote once and we're a majority. Next year they're going to come knocking on our doors to say vote for us. We vote once, we're a majority, but we don't follow through because we just believe that they've got to do the right thing. Nobody's going to do the right thing. Actually, it's true what Mr. Mfoken said because I once approached the chairman of the portfolio committee of finance and enterprises in parliament, and she said exactly the same thing to me. She said, Kuku, actually I was addressing the Indian community in Durban in terms of the social cohesion. And where there was a Mrs. Rajbans and we started engaging. And she said to me, it's very true what you're talking about. Do you know why? Because black people generally, they vote and then they leave things there. They don't go to parliament to lobby these people, to tell them what they need to do. And they just hope that they are going to do the right thing because they voted them into power. But these are the people who are opposed to anything transformation. They will go there and lobby them and tell them and sign petitions and say we've got 1.2 million people who have signed. And then these ones now, they're going to have to show evidence as well to say, well, where are the black people who are 80% of the population? You find they are not there. Not even one of them has come up to say, we are opposed to this or we want to support this. It's because we are not active. Very intelligent people, but very humble about it. If you can just carry that message as we are moving and as we are launching this organization today, it would have been the greatest thing ever, and practicalize it. I said, we launch companies across the spectrum, and I see it every time that we need the engineering, field just across the spectrum to be part of this. As I was coming here to speak, and I'm telling one of the business partners that I'm speaking here, actually, he saw it somewhere advertised. And he says to me, also tell them about equipment manufacturing. As engineers, they should be leading in creating tools and equipments. We shouldn't be buying all equipment from China. So this is the message I just received, right? And he says, these pie cuts, right? Is buying the pies and selling the pies, is now doing the pie cuts. These pie cuts, we are buying them from white manufacturers who also import the pipe warmers from China. Tools and equipment are a huge market, and there's nobody who's helping us with this. So it's a message I'm giving you from one of the people who really admires what you have launched today. To say the engineering part, the aspect of our life is a very important one. Engineering is the application of science to ease life and solve everyday problem. I mean, that's just a simple, clear definition of what engineering is. So, but if engineering is not going to manifest in your hometown, and as an engineer, there's nothing that's happening there. The brain drain, the brain drain issue. Because for people that, like me, come from rural areas, we are now here in Johannesburg. We are just fine here with our families. But we've studied engineering of all sorts. And we're simply contributing to this mega city. And actually, we're not even contributing to it because the infrastructure is falling apart, even in it. So, but you come from Wamhlabialinga and Temgos, and question is therefore, what's happening in Wamhlabialinga? Why are we not charging the people who are supposed to be making a difference and bring these ELP into those spaces? Because we're supposed to build new cities. I mean, it's engineers who are supposed to be in the forefront. Actually, it's a shame, to be honest. A lot of engineers have emigrated, and it's true. South Africa suffers from that very brain drain. It's happening every day. Even black engineers now, they are saying, no, it's better for me to go out elsewhere. Others are talking about going to, what is this beautiful country in Africa? Rwanda. Because it's easy to say, let me go to where things are working, instead of fixing things in your own country. And it's true, many people have left, others are just leaving, they are fed up. They are saying, we're fed up with this government, we're fed up with this situation in our country. I think like Undadil Upali said here, we have to look at that as an opportunity. That's a huge opportunity. Like this crisis that we are in is a huge opportunity. And that's why I'm saying this could not have come at a better time than where we are today. And at some point, some years ago, when I was happy to see Brian from Matseke, he's my manager, my former manager at Transtel, right? And I saw a study that was talking about engineers turned into bankers. Actually, you go to the bank here at FNB, over 70% of the top executives and managers are engineers. Because the ecosystem that is supposed to nurture engineering, talent, and skill is not there. I hope this becomes one. I liked it, my brother, when you were explaining how you want to go about doing this, because this should be the focus of making sure that we create depth. Because once you have people, I know people are fluid like that, they will always move this side and that side. You don't only stick to one, field of study all the way sometimes. But there are those people who are supposed to stick to it. Do your postgrad all the way to PhD, do research in it, come up with solutions, and that should be an environment that ELP, I believe, should nurture to make sure that it creates this depth, so that we have people that will stay the cause and come up with grand solutions to help our country to move forward. And not only our country, we are now in the era where there's Agenda 2063, which is an AU, agenda, which is our agenda as being part of this continent. We've got African Continental Free Trade Area, which very few people do take time to look into and study. There's a tariff book right now which is going to be released for those who are part of the SA Investment Conference. There was our first SG, Wamgelegele, talking about that. What is then going to happen within the intra-Africa trade space? Like it or not, South Africa still leads in the continent. And how they view South Africa, our other brothers and sisters elsewhere, they still view us as the people that should really lead. Because generally there is everything here. As a second, as a sort of like a medium type economy with great infrastructure right across, even though it's dilapidating as we know. But these are things that we need to revive internally here first, and then take these skills and connect. I just wish ELP will not just be a South African organization. I just wish ELP would become a Pan-Africanist, a continental organization that is going to have chapters and branches all across the entire African continent. Because it's our time as Africa to take charge of our own destinies, especially in the space of engineering right across. There are obviously, from the civil engineering to that talks structural, environmental, geotechnical, transport, hydraulics, to chemical engineering that talks biomolecular, materials, molecular, process engineering, corrosion, to electrical engineering, which is really an Achilles heel of our time, which is electronics, computer, and power engineering, to manufacturing that talks thermal, automobile engineering, power plant, and energy engineering. And I know Mr. Mandela is one such person who's an activist. I think you need the energy of such a person. I hope you're still pushing Mr. Mandela, but at some point he gets fearful of politics. Especially as a business person, you always think, what is going to happen with me if I become this aggressive? But I think you need to get the energy of Mr. Mandela and Mr. Mfugeng. At some point, Mr. Mapalala, who are going to be in that space where they are going to agitate for real change. How you place your strategic, placement in terms of the people that are in your organization, you do need to have some people with the energy to ensure that they drive things with proper data that is going to back them up. Because, to be honest, we are still in a racial economy. And it's a racial economy through and through, and those that were supportive of our transformation may be quasi-supporting, sitting on the sidelines. Today they're in the forefront of saying, like Mfugeng, no, we don't want this. We don't want this. But when you look at the stats again, as to how is the transformation, right now, in all these sectors where they don't want any transformation to happen anymore, we're still very low. Which means we are going to be beggars in our country forever. And unfortunately, we are passing this to the next generation. And if we are just sitting on our laurels, being happy that we are middle class, whatever that means, and we've got our high walls all around us, and we are fine, we've got money, it means nothing, because your children and children's children are going to be like Native Americans in America, or Aborigines in Australia, or Maoris in New Zealand, who are not going to be participating and being in the forefront of their own economy. They'll just be sitting like this and watching. And worst of all, in the entire African continent, it means we're not going to achieve nothing. This 60th celebration of AU, from OAU, it's going to mean nothing. Because it means we are cowards people who are just sitting and afraid of the status quo, of how we're going to be labeled when we start rising up and saying we are asserting ourselves, these are things we want to see happening. So engineering is very vast, obviously. Like I said, I'm not going to talk about all of the niceties to you, my learned friends, simply because you know these things and maybe more better than myself. Agricultural engineering, applied engineering, you know, biomedical, industrial, military engineering, mining, nano engineering, nuclear, quantum engineering, textile engineering. And these things talk railway engineering, projects engineering, you know, quality engineering, of course, not to mention sound engineering. I hope maybe there's a space for sound engineering, but if you train them properly, right? Is that so? Oh,
Qualified.
Oh, qualified.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So there's no sound engineer.
No, they are qualified sound engineers.
Oh, they are qualified. Oh, they have to be qualified.
But it's highly claimed.
Yeah. Okay.
By those that are not qualified.
They are not qualified.
Yeah.
I think it's more like the doctors that and professors that are receiving a lot of professorship from honorary,
Yeah.
mainly from some not so known universities. Yeah. So you know, people just wake up and he's a doctor and a professor in everything. So there's potholes, which is why I said, truth be told, there's no much evidence and stats that you need than what is right around us. There's potholes in our country, civil and breaking of civil infrastructure. It's evidently there. There's pipes and other infrastructure that hasn't been maintained. It's evidently there. Electricity crisis, this is the biggest one. You know, it's sad to know that how many companies have closed as a result of the electricity crisis. I don't know, Chair, whether do we really think about this seriously as engineers. I've got a factory in Stenga where we're producing 2,000 shoes a day. We're importing 300, we consume 300 million pairs of shoes in South Africa. And 25 of those we are manufacturing locally in South Africa. 80% of those come from KwaZulu-Natal. And none of those are manufactured by black people. And 75% is importation. Again, we have to seriously engage on import substitution. But down that strata of the manufacturing is a lot of engineering that happens there. And hence, the brother who's just sent a message in terms of the equipments. And engineers must come with such. And right now, instead of producing 2,000 pairs of shoes a day, we're producing maybe 300. Because we are open for literally in 8 hours a day for 3 hours on average. Because load shedding is now with us for almost 8 hours a day. In many places of the country, if you don't know, especially where black people live, it's 12 hours a day, if not 14. Right? Because I don't know with ESCOM, for those who are working with ESCOM here, there is a tendency of treating our people with such huge disdain and disrespect. For them, the energy goes, the electricity goes for hours. It's not there. And it's not an issue. So we operate in such environments where electricity can go for 4 to 6 hours. And at the same time, on the other hand, government says we want to create jobs. We have got over 550 companies that have closed down in South Africa at the moment, with 65 to 70% youth unemployment. You know that. And with 29 million people surviving on basic income grants. And with about 14 million people who go on 1 meal a day. And this is the country that you and I live in. And who are supposed to solve these problems if not engineers? Because they are supposed to solve problems and provide good solutions. And all solutions to this. I liked what I saw being presented here. To talk about, these things must see the light of day. We must talk about them to say engineers can come up with solutions that can solve the problems like this. You don't have to take, how many years does it take to build a power station in China? How many years? 2 to 3 years. That's true. But how many years does it take to build a power station here in South Africa? 7, 15, sometimes close to 20 years. How many years does Sandra take to just construct the road and all sorts of things? Many, many years. And it's a disturbance of traffic and everybody else. We are just taking things at a snail's pace. But we saw it during 2010, that things can be quickly like this, if there is willingness on the part of government and those that are concerned. But these are things that ELP must start looking at and saying, no, we need to change the situation around. We're kind of a country which is doing things in a laissez-faire manner like we are doing in South Africa at the moment. But I think your work and our work here is so much huge and is cut for us. To say, let us not just be, well, very intelligent, but very humble about it. Engineers are in short supply, South Africa and globally. I think we know that. There's a stat that talks to the fact that by the National Science Foundation, that South Africa produces 0.5 students in engineering and natural sciences for every 100,000 people. Right? I think it's something that I liked it, what you said, Mapalala, around what you are doing with young people. We need to find a way of changing that. And many engineers are out there, by the way. You know, and as someone was saying, politicians like to posture and say, well, we've got shortages of skills. I was even talking about their song, which I think Mascadi must start producing in terms of the PIU index. Poverty, inequality, and unemployment. Everybody that stands on the stage, we are suffering from poverty, inequality, and unemployment. It's a song that we love singing. You're going to hear the song being sung very soon, as we know we are headed to the elections next year. Poverty, unemployment, and inequality. When are we going to stop talking about the three, maybe, and start tackling two? And say we've tackled one. So what we are left with is two. So it's not a bashing on politicians, this speech. It's about us collectively to say, then what are we doing about it? Because we can tell government, right, we want to get rid of one, right? So that you can start talking about two only. Right? So because we don't want to hear you, ever, talking about three of them. Of course, they will start coming up with very creative ways and say, well, there's linkages between this and that. But I'm just saying at a very high level, believing that this organization must be able to tackle such issues. So that we don't keep talking about these things as if we are happy that they exist among us. So as I close, and I'm not going to take all the 45 minutes, because I believe the important thing is for us to engage here. Is engagement as to where to from here. What's going to be happening from here going forward? Are we going to be sitting on our laurels? Are we going to be another organization that is just nice? That comes once in a year, we've got dinner functions, we celebrate each other, we pat each other at the back. We're doing so well, my brother and my sister. Are we going to that organization that loves, you know, to just have nice positions or fight for positions now, right? And there's going to be a jostling for positions. Who's going to be the president? Who's going to take over this? Who's going to have to lead this? Because this is the disease that some organizations suffer in a long run. And the whole mission and the rise on data of that organization falls apart. As Babutu Waluchene, you know, the Nigerian author, who says things fall apart. Yes. Things fall apart and things start to do what? To fall apart. Because there's a fight. There's a fight now. There's a fight. I started an organization which I've resisted having people to have a paid membership. I'm not saying this shouldn't, but I'm just giving an example. And I said, let everybody join for free, because I just didn't like it when I see the organizations I've been party to for many years, where there's jostling for position, there's fight for power, there's fight for who goes and sit next to the president during conferences. And there's all those types of things. We need ELP to be an altruistic organization that looks out after the interests of engineers, all of them, and gather them and become a force that is second only to none. A force that will be for good, that will change the whole destiny of engineering in South Africa, in Southern Africa, as well as in the entire African continent. That's what we need. An organization that is going to look at what is happening in the 16 countries that we have in SADC, in this $800 billion economy. Are we making a real impact in terms of the infrastructure projects that are now being rolled out in the entire SADC? Are we making progress in the route from Cape to Cairo? Are we making progress in impacting our friends, brothers and sisters in the diaspora? I was in the US recently where we went to sign some serious agreement with historically black colleges and universities in the States, which is owned by many colleges and universities owned by a lot of our brothers and sisters who are black like us in America. We signed up with some of the organizations in Western Europe as well as Eastern Europe. And this is where, as diaspora, we need to connect as well to friends and people who exist in all of those parts of the world, so that we can enrich our organization and make it a serious player and ensure that there is no manga business in it. We are able to coordinate and cross-pollinate in terms of ideas. Because how others beat us to an extent where they have now raised their issue right up to the UN to say there's a minority genocide that's happening in South Africa, is because they're connected. And they connect quickly. And start raising all sorts of false arguments at the expense of us sitting, being very intelligent and humble about it. We're going to occupy, in the words of William Ruto, I'm sure, it's the speech that's circulating. We're going to occupy every space. We've been gentlemen for far too long. We are now going to appropriate our place because we have a contribution to make. We want to be at the table because if you are not, we are told the risk of not being at the table, you could be in the menu. And that is what we need to do. We have to make sure that we're at the table, because if we are not, we could be the menu. Here is what I wish for the launch of this organization. I hope for the improvement of our electrical road and industrial infrastructure, building of new towns and cities infrastructure. As I made an example of the Gautrain, to be able to be part of monitoring and managing such escalating costs because we are engineers. I hope for the meaningful, robust engagement with key stakeholders like government in terms of decision making, and that we do not relent. We go out there and raise our case because we can and we should. I hope for us to go be lobbyists and lobby for the engineers, just like it's happening now with legal fraternity, where we know many of black lawyers. I know this is not general about black engineers or whatever, it's about engineers, as far as I got the brief. But importantly, it's a lot of black people who are needing to get into this space and succeed in it. I hope for the courage to address issues that affect our country, like the electrical infrastructure and many others. With the closure of refinery in Durban, which is so sad, and the number of jobs that have been affected there. And I wonder, where are our engineers who could have raised an issue and said, this shouldn't be closed if it wasn't supposed to be closed? To raise the issue of carbon footprint, to raise scientific arguments, and not just to mimic what we hear from elsewhere across the globe, of saying we are polluting the air, and when we are supposed to leapfrog into the 4IR space, whereas we know that the trajectory of growth for countries goes via industrialization. Yes. And yet we are told to close down. As one of my colleagues was saying, people with just high-level knowledge of things, you know what they are the ones who are loud and talking. But the real people, they are sitting down very intelligent, and very humble about it. I hope for the courage in being at the center of alternative energy solution. I hope for the reversal of the brain drain that we've been experiencing, where people are now going to Europe and many other countries just so that they can get better salaries and contribute to the already advanced economies, and being locked and jailed in those countries, all because of money and not destiny. I hope for the growth of Engineering League of Progress to be a Pan-Africanist organization, thus growing beyond the borders of South Africa, all over Africa, and ensuring that its impact is felt across many countries over our beautiful continent. I hope for an impact and inspiration to young African leaders who will follow in the footsteps of bold and courageous leaders like yourselves. I hope that we'll respond to the call of duty as our country is being plunged into darkness, and now we're being threatened by the great collapse. I hope it's not going to be a futuristic thing, this hope, because hope deferred makes the heart sick. And I thank you.